I'm sure there's no one in the audience that hasn't heard of Kenneth Feld. I think not even arguably the world's largest producer of indoor shows and entertainment on the planet today. We're going to show a little reel in just a second to give you just a sample of the things that Feld Entertainment is up to, but include Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus, 3 Editions, Disney on Ice, Marvel Universe Live, Monster Jam, International Hot Rod Association, AMA Supercross Championships, Doodlebops Live, Disney Live, Broadway plays, Vegas attractions, television production. It goes on and on. It's an amazing aggregation of enterprise. Why don't we roll the video and we'll give you a peek at the world of Feld Entertainment. They do all this with sound, too. So 5,000 shows annually for 30 million people, employing over 3,000 people, owning the 2 longest privately owned trains in the country, each over a mile long to transport the circus units from venue to venue. They've recently relocated their entire production facility almost completely down here to Florida. We'll talk about that in a minute. Forbes magazine estimates $1 billion in revenue annually, and it's all the vision of one guy who we're going to talk to in a second, Kenneth Feld. He began working at the family business. Ringling Brothers was owned by his father, Irvin Feld, back in 1970, right out of college, and in 1984 he became CEO of Feld Entertainment and has grown the business, as you can see and you can imagine, to an incredible degree. And now his 3 daughters, Nicole, Alana, and Juliet, are very much a part of the family business and taking the reins of different parts of the organization. So we're going to have a great conversation about what this means to be producing live entertainment in today's incredibly diverse entertainment world. So please welcome for a conversation here on the SATE stage, Kenneth Feld.
Thank you. Thank you.
So it's incredibly appropriate here. We're here in a place where there's a lot of circus history and a lot of tradition. To be talking with you, not about where the circus and live entertainment has come from, but where it's going in the future. You know, we're in an entertainment environment where there's a million media choices out there for us, a lot of distribution channels and everything, but you still have an incredible array of live entertainment that you do. What is it that makes Feld Show special, and how are you adapting to that modern world?
Well, you can tell how well technology works all the time. We usually have sound, but actually right before we came on, I was saying that we're in the non-lingual entertainment business. It's all visual. And I said, so we always figure on our shows, if the sound goes out, and believe me, I did not do this on purpose, that the show goes on and people get it and they understand it. And one of the reasons for our success, and I think the future, is that this is the kind of entertainment. We operate in 72 countries, and it's universal. Human emotions are the same. Kids are the same, families, they want to make sure that they can really be entertained with something that's good, wholesome, exciting, and that's what we do. And I think the aspect of live entertainment, three-dimensional, will never be replaced, because you get a visceral reaction, and I think all of you know in theme parks, you see reactions that kids have or parents have that is unlike anything you can ever see if you go to a movie. I mean, people sit and watch a movie, or people will sit and watch a screen of something, but when they're there and they see the actual three-dimensional live entertainment, they connect with that emotion, and I think it elevates the experience. And I think that's why what we do will always be there. The forms change, the technology changes, because technology is the adjective for what we do. It's the support. No one is ever going to pay money to see technology. And it goes back to what this whole thing is about, storytelling, that you've got to tell a story in some form, get the people in there, use the technology to enhance the experience and give the consumer what they want in today's world.
Do you think attention spans are changing?
Absolutely, absolutely. And everything that we do, for instance, if you go to see Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey today, there is no act in the show that's longer than the time between commercials on TV. And if you think about it, so that's about 7 minutes to 10 minutes. The shows today, in total, with a 15-minute intermission, will run 2 hours and 5 minutes, whereas when I started in 1970, the biggest issue that we had was how can we get the show to below 3 hours? Because that was always the time limit with union calls and everything else. So we got it down to 2:58 and we were happy. So we have the same number of performers, more action than ever before, but instead of in 3 hours, it's in 2 hours. And that's really what's happened today.
As you go about developing a new show, and it's not just the circus now, it's Disney on Ice and motorsports, what's that process like for you?
The process is, in our company now, because we have so many shows out there, and in the first quarter of the year, which is our busiest quarter, in any given week, we will have 35 productions someplace in the world going on, every single week. So it's a continuum, and we do have a process, and we are vertically integrated. So in our facility, we build the shows, we assemble the lighting, the sound, we build some costumes, some we do still contract out, but all the production, everything is done there, we rehearse there. And the process is such that every show that we do in every type business line that we have, we create a 1-inch scale model, and we have a white model meeting. And so maybe depends on the particular production, but the typical life cycle, let's say for a Disney on Ice show, is probably 6 months from the beginning until the day it goes out the door, which is really short. And to make sure that we can get it right, the white model is an exercise where everyone that touches this production will be there. So we'll have the white model meeting, could be 60 or 70 people, and it goes from advertising to PR to lighting people if we have lasers in the show, production designers, lighting designers, every single person, all the engineers, the rigging, and we go through it in cardboard, and people look at it, and then after we go through it, we have anywhere from an 8-hour to 2 or 3 days of, in every possible detail, what will work, what won't work. And the goal is to try and solve 75 to 80% of our issues when it's in the model form before we get to rehearsal. Rehearsal is laid out well in advance, and the one thing that we know is we're committed. If the show is opening January 4th, it's opening then, and we start rehearsal, let's say November 25th, we know we have that finite amount of time to get it as close to right as we can. So we need to be highly organized, and especially in the circus, which is the most complex of, I think, anything that we do, if you get behind, you tend to never catch up.
I'm really, and we talked about this a little bit before, enamored of the notion of the white model. We live in a digital age where it's easy to design this stuff in a computer and put it on a screen and show it to everybody. What is it about a dimensional model that makes it work better for you?
Well, this happened years ago and before they were doing digital models, but we would have a presentation, production designs on boards, costume sketches, all that. And we're doing a 3-dimensional show. We're not doing a 2-dimensional show. So we really wanted to see everything as it would be. And the other thing was we would have a lot of creative people in these meetings, but we would have a lot of quote-unquote non-creative people in the meeting. And we wanted to make sure everyone had the same vision of the show. And that was very important because we had our sales team going out and they had to sell it as well. And they had to fully understand what it was going to be. So it's something that's tactile, it's tangible. The other thing that we do, in addition to staging what happens in the show, we stage the entire backstage. So we have every prop, every scenic element. We actually have the people in scale. And we move this around enough so we know how we can get it in every building, in every arena, how we have to set up the backstage, which is of equal importance to what happens out front.
In the theme park business, we have what we call soft opening, where we open a show. It's like a Broadway preview. Do you take your shows out and preview them before the opening dates?
No, we don't. And so, the most difficult thing is we're rehearsing in a relative vacuum for 5 weeks where, we see it every day, and you learn to fall in love with things and you learn to not fall in love with certain things. But you see them every day and you think, oh no, this isn't going to get applause, this area isn't going to do that. And then when you finally get an audience in there, you see the reactions. And we do change the shows in many times for the first 2 or 3 months while they're out on the road. We're constantly tinkering, and we've had one show that's been on the road for 19 years. So we go out, we're constantly changing that, and we're constantly changing and updating and looking at responses. And you see the older shows and the music is, you sort of cringe because it's from 19 years ago. It's not the track that you would do today and those kinds of things. So it is a constant process, and we have great maintenance ongoing, but we don't preview. We're out there, we have to be prepared, and the only true response that you ever get is from a paying audience, not a free audience. So it doesn't matter till they pay, and you have to be right, and we see what they like, what they respond to, and then we change accordingly.
I think you just answered my next question, which was a lot of us out here will identify that we propose projects and they're subjected to focus groups prior to going out. How much do you rely on market research to tell you what you need to do, and how much is just your gut?
Well, it used to be 100% my gut until I made some mistakes. And then I said, my gut isn't so good anymore. And what happened was, when my daughters were young, they were the absolute target audience, and I could go with them places and in the mall and stuff and see how they responded and what they did and what they gravitated to. And that was a really good indicator. Well, now my daughters are the moms of the target audience, so I guess for them it's great because they see what their kids like and appreciate, so they get that benefit. But we do a lot of market research, and we do it not as much for the content as for how will we get to the consumer, what will motivate them in the 20 seconds or less that we have to deliver what our story is. And again, we don't make anything if we don't think we can sell it. So the process is simultaneous to that, as well as we create all of the consumer products that we sell on the show. So that actually has a longer lead time even. So a lot of times the consumer products are ahead of the production, but the marketing and the sales and the production are at the same time, and they're inseparable in how we operate. And most of the research is based on that.
Who's the decision maker to come to see your shows? Is it the mom or kids?
It's always the mom. Even for our shows now that we're in the motorsports business, which is a little more male when you go see the shows, the moms actually make the decision, and they say to the dads, just have your day out with the kids, go, leave me alone. But they'll buy the tickets still. And I think that the big difference is our Supercross, which is a real sport, which is a much sort of younger, primarily male demo as a purchaser. That's different. And now with Marvel Universe Live, what we found is the moms are making the decision, but it is a lot more dads with kids of both gender. So that's been a little bit of a surprise. We thought it would be a little more male-leaning, but it's not. And so it's great news. And that's a unique type of proposition. So the trouble there, not the trouble, but everyone knows Marvel, and they know a bunch of the Marvel characters, but no one knew what Marvel Universe Live. And we had no footage, and this is the problem without doing previews. We had no real footage of the show until we were 3 to 4 weeks out, where we could actually take show footage and put it in, and we could see a huge jump in business once people were able to see and understand what the production was.
So talking about Marvel Universe, I think we have a little clip, if we're ready to roll it, hopefully with sound.
If it doesn't have sound, I'll explain it to you. I'll hum a voiceover.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
You mentioned to me that this is
one of the biggest tours in the country.
I've been waiting for this for 46 years.
That's awesome.
I've been waiting
And
for this
people
for
can't
46
stop
years.
talking about it.
It was
And people
fantastic.
can't
See this
stop
guy?
talking
That's
about
what
it.
I felt like it was fantastic. You see this guy? That's what I felt like in there. It was wonderful.
I would definitely recommend it to family and friends. Had a blast.
Marvel Universe, Spider-Man, Captain America, Black Widow, and Spider-Man, Captain America, Black Widow, and all your favorite Marvel superheroes from Loki and Battle to save the universe. From Loki and transport into the world of Marvel and get transported into the world of Marvel and experience an event for the whole family where every electrifying action-packed moment Marvel Universe is live. Marvel Universe Live. Buy your tickets now at MarvelUniverseLive.com. Buy your tickets now at MarvelUniverseLive.com.
That looks better than Comic-Con. So what makes this show technically so sophisticated?
Well, this was a show that was 2 years in the making. So it's really the longest lead that we've had on any production in 40 years that I've been involved with. So the motivation for all the technology was, how are we going to do this how are we going to do it differently, and how will we do it in a way that matches up? So if you go to the Iron Man films or the Avenger films, I mean, they're extraordinary in what's done. So how can we basically do this live 8 times a week? So the technology that we used, first of all, it was doing a live show, but it is, we use 3D projection mapping, and we have 26 projectors. And the entire surface, so we bring in the floor, we bring in everything, is all a projection surface, everything that you see. So if you would walk into the venue, you would just see this gray, ugly type thing, and then it comes to life with all of the projections. So we're making a 100-minute movie at the same time we were making a 100-minute show. And we had an original storyline and original music score as well. In addition, we had the longest fly track, over 1,700 feet of fly track. So we had to rethink how we did that. And instead of having cables, it's sort of like a third rail, upside down subway system that winds throughout the overhead. So the overhead is really backstage in the sky, we call it. And we typically have anywhere from 5 to 7 stagehands up there, riggers, crew people, as well as performers, because there's a lot of descending, ascension, flying, and those kinds of things. In addition, because of the complexity, you could never get spotlight operators to cover it. So we have a black track system that combines the video projection, the lighting, the lasers, and the soundtrack all combined in one system. And just the programming and the automation time was something, probably the major thing that we didn't plan on. It was so time consuming, and literally every time, if you would put an understudy up, it could be an hour and a half to get the weights right and all the stuff before you could actually send someone up. So that took up a lot of time. We were actually in workshop and rehearsal for over 3 months, and it was fortunate that we did have the facility down the road here to do that. And it was also the first time that we've taken every discipline that Feld Entertainment's involved in, whether it was circus, whether it was motorsports, stunts, all these things, and combine them into one. And the difficulty, of course, and we found this when we started Disney on Ice, is we're taking athletes, ice skaters, and trying to make them into actors. In this case, we were taking stunt people or motorcycle athletes and turning them into actors. So, because you couldn't do it the other way around. And it was pretty fascinating to do that, and it turned out extraordinary. We did something we didn't even realize. When we were rehearsing, we set up some scaffolding at Angel Stadium in Anaheim, and we had these motorcycle performers try and see the highest that they could go and figure that they could do it daily. So it was 19 feet from the ground up to the top of the scaffolding in the parking lot at Angel Stadium. And so we did that and had a few people that could do it, and we incorporated it in the show. And you literally see Captain America, who's chasing Red Skull, and they go from the ground up 19 feet to a small, tiny platform that's on top of this stage deck. And we found out that the world record was only 16.5 feet. And they're doing 19 feet every show, which was pretty amazing. So we were able to take it to a level that I think people couldn't believe that we could do day in and day out, because we don't have the option of green screen or cutting and stopping and starting. So it's got to go in a continuum. So it's been pretty amazing.
So there's obviously a level of spectacle to shows like that. That's what people want to see. We're talking about storytelling. How do those two begin, and how do they find their way to the middle?
Well, it starts, everything, by the way, everything in our philosophy starts with storytelling. And even to the extent Ringling Brothers Barn and Bailey, which people tend to think as a review, we create a story, and I'm not telling you it's Shakespeare, but it is something that gives us a roadmap to get us through the production and what I call a created logic for us. Because otherwise, you'd just be scattered all over the place. So we always have a story. In the case of Marvel, the first thing we did was come up with the concept, and that was really the pitch that enabled us to get the contract. So we did the concept for the show before we ever had a contract or a license to do the show. And the amazing thing is 90% of the original concept is what the final story is. And Marvel was extraordinary to work with, and Joe Quesada and a lot of other people at Marvel had great input into the story to tell us what characters would do. A lot of these characters have never worked together, and that was another great thing. So we actually have some of the X-Men with the Avengers and Spider-Man, which is you will never see in the films. So we had to figure out how to incorporate that. Then another piece of technology that we did is we created a product called Electrolink, and we created a prequel comic book that we sent out to people. If they bought the original tickets, we would, when we went on sale before we had the show, that it gave you the prequel of the story. And it was Spider-Man was working on this thing to help Iron Man, and it's Electrolink that gives him additional power if his arc reactor gets weak. Well, how that's used in the show, and it's used throughout, is when you come in, you can buy Electrolink, and you can wear it on your wrist, and it's a nice thing with the logo on it, and it's passive until it's called upon four times within the production, and it lights up. So you see everybody in the audience light up, and we can actually control that from the lighting board. So it's a great thing, gives a level of interactivity, a level of surprise, and we do it in the first half to set up for the finale when that actually saves the day and saves Iron Man and against all evil, of course. Yeah.
And the world is safe for another day.
Yeah.
So you alluded to your new production facilities down here. Can you talk a little bit more about the scale of those and what you're able to do on site there? Okay,
we, like everything over the past 45 years, it's all happened by mistake. Not really mistake, but in 1995, we were down here and we were looking for a facility, a winter quarters, and I was taken to, it's an old Siemens plant where they were building electric turbines. And they lasted 2 years. GE was there for a year. And then we saw it, and it was great, and it would have been a wonderful facility for us, but at the time, the company wasn't large enough, and it was too expensive. So fast forward about 3 years ago, and we were bursting at the seams, and we had people all over Palmetto, Florida, and people outside of Chicago and Washington, D.C., and all over. So we felt it was the right time to bring the whole company together under one roof. So we were looking to build something, and we couldn't find anything, and it was, again, very expensive. And I just asked, I said, is the old Siemens plant still there? And it was still there, and we found out it was in foreclosure. So we actually acquired it and put a fortune into it, and the state and the county has been wonderful to us. And it is the second largest single-purpose building undercover in the state of Florida, next to NASA operations. So it's 600,000 feet under roof in one building. And we have 72-foot-high ceilings, so we have 2 rehearsal halls, each the size of, let's say, Madison Square Garden, back to back. We have space for 34 monster trucks, and we actually now build the trucks down there. We have in storage and use over 12,000 costumes. We build all of our scenic. We assemble all the electric. We also have all of our office functions, our entire consumer products operation with the exception of warehouse and distribution there. And we also then have our railroad recycling. We're also the largest owner of portable ice floors in the world. So we do all of that maintenance there and all the fiberglassing and painting for monster trucks. And we actually have a paint booth that's large enough to build, to put a railroad car in, paint there. So it's huge, and it's the change. We've been in there, it'll be 2 years in January. The greatest thing about it, of course, is all the people under one roof and the ability to really get all the brain power that we have in our company. We have wonderful people. And so we're doing motorsports, and we're bringing people from ice operations and from the circus. We're getting everybody involved. So it's been this great cross-pollination, and I think the big beneficiary has been the consumer because we're able to do better things with newer and better ideas.
So you've now got this fantastic machine to help drive all your different enterprises. I want to go back and talk a little bit about just sort of how you got into this and how you would maybe do things differently. I read somewhere that you said when you first finished school, you went directly to work for your dad, and you actually now wish you'd gone out and gotten a job somewhere else for a couple of years first. What do you wish you would have done?
Well, it's true, I've never had a job. I think it's too late for me. No one would hire me at this point. And I'm not interested in that. But I think how it impacted me was, I have 3 daughters, and when they were growing up, you know, they would come down to circus rehearsals in the winter and ice show rehearsals in the summer and all this. And then they went off to college, and they all became educated. And then I had a rule that once you stop going to school, you have to get a job, and it can't be with our company. And they had to work at least 2 years elsewhere. So they all did that. And that was sort of the lesson that I learned. And I think, you know, there are a lot of strange dynamics in a family business. And I wanted, if they wanted to come in, and I made them write papers for me. And it was about what and where they thought they could contribute to the company, what their passion was, and really the reason why they wanted to join the company, and none of it could be about a paycheck. And what that allowed me to do was figure out where at least they should start in the company, and then they've worked their way in different ways. And it's truly, you know, as a parent, to have your 3 daughters, or if there were boys, 3 boys, but your children in the business with you is extraordinary. And now they have kids, and it's going to be up to them if their kids decide they want to go in this business or not. But everything we're doing is building it for the long term, and I think that's the real key about it.
You said to your daughters, if you do one thing, make your mistakes early.
Yes.
So what other advice do you have for your daughters, and what advice, there's a lot of students here in the audience today, for somebody getting started in this business whose father might not own the circus?
Yeah, and what was interesting, I didn't really grow up with the circus. So I grew up, my dad was in the music business, and I grew up on that side. And I think the greatest advice, and you know, everybody says it, but it's true, is you need to have a passion for whatever you do. And I think a lot of it is, and especially with younger people, when you go out and your first big job, let's say, a lot of it is about the people. You're never going to be, or most likely, your first job is not going to be what your last job is. And I think it's important to go to work in a place that has an atmosphere where you like the people, where you like, hopefully, who it is you work for, but to be in an environment where you're going to have people that will mentor you, that will set you up for success versus failure. And it's really hard to decipher, but what I would say to anybody is, yes, go for your interview, talk to that person, but talk to some other people in the company. What's it like working there? What is the environment? Because a lot of people start out in one area and you're going to wind up in another area. But the important thing is the people, and that you want to feel, you'd never want to look forward to the weekends. I think that's the most important thing. You want to love what you do. You spend most of your life working.
So looking to the future, obviously, hopefully, your enterprises will continue to grow and expand, but what do you think is going to change as far as the actual content of what you do and how people will experience it? What's going to be different?
I would say the content is always changing. We're always trying to change it to get ahead of the curve. I think, I always say the biggest challenge to our business is the demise of the traditional family unit, if you think about it. So what we do is we tend to bring families together and create a conversation, at least on the way home, about what they saw. And I think that's the important thing. The competition is for time. That's why the shows are shorter. And to give continued value. And I think the technology is, again, I go back to what I said earlier, is the support. The storytelling is the most important thing. And, the issues, for instance, the circus, it's 145 years old. It has always changed. It couldn't have survived all of these years through every economic cycle and everything else that's gone on in the world if they hadn't changed. And we're constantly changing it, and we never stop. And I think that's the thing that we're always thinking about. With motorsports, which for us is a new business, relatively new, we acquired 6 years ago, we've more than doubled, almost tripled what that business is. And a lot of it is to present it in different ways. And we're going through a thing now with Monster Jam, and I don't know if you all have seen it. It's these giant trucks that crush cars and things like that. And cool. We are actually taking our, and I call them athletes now, not drivers, through a whole physical fitness program, as well as media training them and training them to become personalities versus just people that drive trucks, and what that perception is. We're also increasing the diversity. We have a lot of women drivers now. We're sending them to the IMG Academy that's down the street. So that they're becoming athletes, we're also teaching them different driving disciplines. So it's not just monster trucks, it's other versions of trucks that we're creating that we'll come out with in January to test the tour. So our market research a lot of times is on the road. So we'll have in a year maybe 300 monster truck events. So we'll take a tour of 10 cities and do something brand new there with the scoring system, how it's presented with the video packages, everything else, and we'll see how that goes. If that works well, then we'll roll that out in 2016 to more of these tours. And we'll probably, and I feel confident that it's going to work, it will probably change the whole perception of Monster Jam. And it'll legitimatize it into more of a sport. Right now, I think people view it more as professional wrestling. And it's a little bit like wrestling with no predetermined outcome. But so we're constantly changing what we do, looking at it. I think if any of you get a chance to see the Marvel Universe live show, it's absolutely cutting edge in every way possible. That probably sets a new standard for live arena entertainment in the world. And so we have to raise the standards on everything we do to stay up to date with that and continue to get ahead of whatever the competition is.
So there's a lot of other touring entertainment out there. Some of it stays, some of it goes. But you've been around longer and are bigger than anybody else. What's the special ingredient of a Feld show that you think is consistent to everything?
I think it has to do with pace. Because most of my time today, since my daughter's in the business and we have this great company, is I'll go to our different events and I watch the event with one eye, but I watch the audience with the other eye, and I talk to people. And you know, you can still get research, but you want to see the real responses and to get a better understanding of what the consumer wants. And the one thing that we don't do, or we try not to do, is we don't create the shows for ourselves. We create the shows for the consumer. So it isn't something that is, oh, I love this, so it has to be in a show. If it works for the consumer, if it's what the public wants, we'll do it. If it's not, we're not going to do it. And it's just how we operate, and I think it's one of the things that's allowed us to stay ahead of it. And also, everything we do, we look long-term, and our thought process is a lot more than a year or the next quarter. And, you know, I don't think anyone thought 35 years ago when we started Disney on Ice that there would be 9 touring units of that in 70 countries, and then the offshoot of that is our Disney Live business, which there are 8 of. So it's the trust that these companies that we license the products from have. It's the ability to understand how to put the shows together, how to sell them, and how to keep them vibrant wherever we go in the world, and flexible. And I think we can do that and do it well, especially because we're a private company.
Well, this has been a fantastic opportunity to have this conversation. I'm sure that folks out there have questions they'd like to ask too. So maybe we could turn the house lights up and see if there's a question or two.
I got one over here. He's looking.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Adam.
This is amazing, wonderful stuff. And the questions about what your challenges are really interesting as you keep growing forward. And the fact that time is a big one is really interesting. I imagine scale must be another one. That what arena shows are great at is horizontality, but movies give you all this gigantic scale, and you're used to seeing Iron Man this big, but you can't make a human being bigger than that big. How do you make people bigger in this world where people expect them to be bigger?
Well, I think the great thing is you're going to live entertainment. So the idea is you're seeing people that look like us. And I'm not saying Iron Man in a costume, but the Tony Stark is, 5'10" or 6 feet or whatever he is, and he's up there and he's doing these things and he turns into Iron Man. But the big key is understanding the scale and the relationship, but also the wonderful thing about lighting today and technology is that you can isolate and focus things. So the idea, and this really goes to all of our shows, but Marvel is a great example of it, that we have scenes with 2 or 3 people and they're elevated on a deck that's 20 feet in the air and they're totally isolated and you're riveted back there, and we go from that and we transform into another environment. With motorcycles, we have the Statue of Liberty, and we have inside this spiral scaffolding with fights inside and outside. So they are flying, and when you go there, the real answer and the success is when the kids start cheering and start booing for the villains and totally get involved and wrapped up in it. And look, I've got to tell you, we work so long and so hard, and you operate without any feedback for so long that you're saying, well, we think this is good. Is it really good? And so what we did, and this is a great example. So there are ways in the live business and how you do the music, how you can encourage applause. And when we're in the circus, or even Disney on Ice, which is a lot of storytelling, there are definite moments when the audience wants to applaud, because if you don't allow them, there's a level of frustration. So with the Marvel show, it's music-driven with underscore, but it's a dialogue, and dialogue is not your friend in an arena, I will tell you that. So we've got to figure out the action and layer that, and we did the music score, and it was very cinematic, and we're in there with nobody, so it was fine, it went. So we have the first performance in Tampa, and we're going, oh my God. And I could tell people were getting ready to applaud, but we were right into the next thing, right into the next thing. So then we went back and we ended up opening up certain things. We did some buttons on the end of things to allow for the applause, which we get now. And it's in places that I thought, but because we were there by ourselves, we got a little insecure and didn't want to leave the lag in there, which you won't even notice it if you're at a live show. So those are the kinds of things that we do, and we have a lot of great people that work on it together.
So what you're saying is you don't need Iron Man 40 feet high because theater makes him 40 feet high. You can get him there through traditional theater technique.
But it's got to be relative to the scale of everything else.
Right.
And that's really the key. And you know, in the circus, the one thing that never changes is elephants are always about 9 feet tall, and they're these big gray things that you have to try and light, which is not the easiest thing. But what we do on the entrance is we make the entrance where the elephants come in the main entrance, as small as we possibly can, so that it looks like the elephants, and it's typically the height of an elephant with someone on top of him, and that's where the bottom of the door is there, so that you get the feeling, wow, this is the largest thing you'll see today. But there are all of these kinds of things that you deal with constantly.
That's great.
There's one in the back there.
Thank you, and thanks for a great presentation. One comment and then one question. I love presentations like this, but I'd never thought, of course, that applause is for the audience and not for the people on stage. Thank you. Now it makes complete sense that if you don't pace it into the experience, it's frustrating for people. So, moment of clarity for me. For my question, I want to go back to the intellectual property and working maybe in particular with Marvel. I think you mentioned in passing that some of the characters in your show come from worlds where they'll never meet in the world of film. So I'm curious about the creative relationship between you and the license holder. Are those goalposts set up front? Do you kind of come up against goalposts through the production? And how do those conversations go between you and say Marvel on something where you've got a great idea and it's going to kind of move the goalposts? And I'm just wondering how that process works.
The process was done up front, and basically, and I think this is a function of experience and being a partner with Disney for over 34 years, that in dealing with Marvel, it was very important because at the time there was Spider-Man on Broadway, there is a tremendous amount of licensed Marvel stuff out there, that we were able to encompass all the worlds in the show because we needed to have something where we had the most Marvel characters, superheroes and villains live that have ever been assembled. And that was my main push, and I wouldn't have made the deal if I was not able to get that, I don't believe. Because then I would have had, I didn't know what was going to crop up in different places. And It's the biggest investment in a show that we've ever made, and I knew we needed to create a whole new world for this thing, but I had to get everything that I needed to make that happen. And so that was up front. The process, once we made the deal, was great. I must say, Joe Casado, who I think is the chief creative officer there, was the best to work with. And, you know, you would send a script, and he would come back with his notes were 3 to 5 alternatives for every place where he had a question. So it wasn't like, the worst is, and you all know this, when somebody has approval and they say, we don't like this. Well, what don't you like? And you can never get it out of them. That's, I mean, you know, that's the killer. Here, there was so much clarity, and it was a wonderful, wonderful relationship. The other thing is, we were not able to take anything from the film world. So everything we did, the genesis was out of the comic world. So that was a whole different thing as well.
Who else?
I'm amazed at a number of things about your business, but the two things that strike me is the longevity of your relationship with Disney in the licensing process. How has that relationship changed over the 45 years, or 35 years, number one? And number two, how do you handle all of your live employees all over the world that you don't have a train for to sleep in? I mean,
that's actually easier. You know, the one thing I don't recommend for any of you out there, it's one thing to be the employer, you don't want to be the landlord if you don't have to be. So the Disney relationship started in 1980, and it started again out of necessity, almost. We had acquired a company called Ice Follies and Holiday on Ice, and this was in '79. And we figured, okay, it's simple operation compared to the circus. And then we did a brand new show for 1980, and it was a spectacular show. And more people stayed away than ever. It was a total business disaster. And I realized one day, I looked at the audience, and I saw very few families. It was a much older demographic. And I said, you know, I don't know how to build a business on this, and my audience is going to die. So I then went, and sooner, I mean, everyone will, but this was sooner. And I didn't want the business to die. So I went to Disney, and I had an idea. My idea was I'd like to take the Disney characters, some Disney stories, and put a 20-minute segment in Ice Follies and Holiday on Ice. And they immediately rejected this idea. So as I was being escorted out of the Disney office in Burbank and told, no, you're a nice guy, but no thanks, I said, well, what if we converted one entire Ice show to Disney stories and characters, and we called it Walt Disney's World on Ice. We made a quick U-turn back in there. And what would never happen today, and 2 weeks later, we had a contract signed. And in 1981, this was like in October of '80, so in July of '81, the first Disney on Ice opened. And this was a time when Disney was not the hot property that it is today. And I was on a 1-year contract. So we made this huge capital investment, not knowing if it was going to work. The arenas around the country made me guarantee them rent in order to do it. We went out with it. It was a huge success. And not until Michael Eisner came in '84 did I get a longer-term contract. So it was about 3 or 4 years on year to year, which was, if you're running your own business and making the investment every year, pretty scary. The second half of your question, the 3,000 associates that we have are really great, and they're all over the world. But we, I think, are a relatively paternalistic company. We try to be. And we have very good management on the road with these people, and very open forum. I must tell you, years ago, all of our ice show employees and all of our circus employees were unionized. They all voted to decertify. And a lot of it is how you work with the people. And, you know, not everybody's going to be wonderful, but we try and create a spirit of working with each other. And we know people are many times, while they're on the road, 50 weeks a year, far away from their homes. So they need to become a family with each unit, and that's what happens. And so we're fortunate, and I must say the issues are few and far between that we encounter.
Hi, I think it was an interesting point that you mentioned. It was usually the mom who made the decision to bring their kids to the show. So I guess my question is, how do you define your target audience, and how do you design an experience or a show that is attractive to the kids and also can get their parents involved?
It's a good question. The moms are the decision makers, and each of the shows is slightly different in the target with the age brackets. And it's very different in each part of the world. So another huge issue in this country is age compression, where you get an 8-year-old today that was like a 15-year-old a few years ago. And if you're a parent, you know it's a problem. But what that does, that shortens in many ways the lifespan of the potential audience that we have. But we do research to try and really understand who the exact demo is. Like Disney Live skews much younger than Disney on Ice. The circus is much broader. Monster Jam is very different. Marvel, we found, is quite different from everything. So we do that, and so we try and figure out where they're consuming their advertising from, and that's how you tend to target them and message them. The shows, here's the thing. The worst thing in the world is to go to one of these events and the dads are sitting there because, or the moms, and they have to take the kids and it's a chore. And think how, if you have young kids, it's awful to get them out of the house, get them all organized in a car. They're yelling, they're screaming, did you bring the peanut butter and jelly sandwich for this one? All of this stuff. You get to the venue, you've got to pay for parking. You have people that we don't control how they are in the venue. Some are great, some aren't. They're yelling at you. You get in there. The kids want to run all over the place. We have all of our concession stands because we want you to buy stuff, right? So we're yelling at you in a way. And, you know, the parents are going crazy. And the last thing you want is for the show to be a bad experience for them. So you don't want them tweeting during the show. You don't want them, like, texting and not paying attention to what it is. So we have to target, we understand, we're going to get the kids no matter what. So the humor has to be, a lot of times, goes above the heads of the kids, but the parents say, oh, that was smart, or that was funny, or it's something that they can relate to. And you'll see that throughout the Marvel show is a great example of how we do that. But in our Disney Live shows as well. And I think it's a real important thing to keep the parents engaged, because if they like it, they're more inclined to bring everybody back. What we don't want is a neighborhood show where one parent gets elected to take 8 kids. We want all the parents to bring all the kids, and that's the best way. So it's important to gear it on a bunch of levels.
One last question.
I'm intrigued, if you follow that line of thought, for dealing with the complexities of a show that are exciting for kids and for the parents. But you mentioned, you know, you're in 72 countries. And, you know, how do you change your entertainments when you have folks sitting in the audience from 72 countries or a whole host of countries? And also sort of along that line is, I think it's really intriguing to look at you. You've been in business for 125 years, or someone in your family has, sort of, across generations, and you've kept yourself relevant. And so this global arena is something that's had a huge impact. So how do you take this IP and you make it relevant, you know, to this global audience? How do you change things?
I think one of the reasons why we've been able to be successful for so many years is I don't talk about my mistakes here. So whenever I've gone off what our core competencies are, typically I haven't done so well. So I did grow up at some point and realized, okay, I'm happy with who I am when I grow up. And what we know is large-scale, live, family entertainment worldwide. And we know how to do that better than anyone. That's what we stick to, and we do it the best. So we're not scattered all over the place. We're very focused on that. Typically, we don't have 72 countries in one audience. So, for instance, we go and we play Brunei, and you know, we had Little Mermaid over there, so we have to put leggings on Little Mermaid, and it's a very different look than what you might expect if you saw it down the road a piece. We had one time there the 3 little pigs in the show. We just had to cut them out of the show because it was against the local beliefs. So there's a lot of things. In Japan, another thing, a big thing at the end of every show there, the audience, they go in an appreciation and they give flowers to all the people. And we had to change the whole finale so there was a curtain call that could accept what they felt was their graciousness to do that. And over time you learn, and we talk to people locally. We change our advertising every place we go as well as a result of that. And we're dubbed in whatever the local language is. So all of those things happen. The one thing that doesn't change, and doesn't change any place in the world, is what strikes a chord with your heart and your emotion. And in all of our businesses, we don't need to explain anything. When you see somebody go in a cage with 20 tigers, it says what it is right away. If you go and you see Disney on Ice, and everyone in the world knows Mickey Mouse, they know what it stands for, they know all of these great stories, so they put it together. I mean, we just did Frozen. More people know what that story is worldwide than any other story ever. Well, we had to take the liberty, because we're doing it again. We don't do these shows, we adapt them. So we had to reorder the show, which, you know, at first the filmmakers saying, how can you do this? This isn't how it happened in the film. Well, we can't have 84 scenes. We can have X amount of scenes. And we redid certain things. We took intermission right after Let It Go, because we figured that was a moment that people remember. It's so dynamic. We also did something else with Let It Go that we've never, I don't think in my history, ended in Act 1 when you're going into intermission with one skater on the ice. And it was just about that, to heighten the whole emotional level. So we're constantly changing these for what we think will appeal to the audience. But if it doesn't, we will go back and we'll change it, and we make the changes. And so we're putting in a Frozen 20-minute segment into a show that is rehearsing now in Poland and open there in a couple of weeks. And then we have another one in the US that we're putting it into. So it's just the emotion, the human emotion, that we're after. And because we're such visual entertainment, we can do it in a physical sense as well as the audio sense.
This has been an incredibly fascinating conversation. I've learned a lot. Really appreciate it. And I think we just want to say Thank you so much, Chief, for taking the time to be with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.